All right, man, peace. So I'm sure that you brothers who follow the NBA are fully aware by now that Russell Westbrook, a.k.a. Russell Westbrook, the super talented but basketball IQ challenged, ultra competitive combo guard formerly of the Oklahoma City Thunder, has been traded to the Houston Rockets in exchange for Chris Paul, a.k.a. CP3, a.k.a. CP0, as Skip Bayless calls him, due to some of the explosive chemistry issues that have started to come to the forefront and that have always existed in the background between himself and James Harden, a.k.a. James Hardhead. And one has to wonder exactly what type of team the Houston Rockets are going to throw out there onto the basketball floor this season. Here's what we know. They're going to be extremely talented, extremely dangerous, and extremely dumb. There's no doubt about it. They're going to be the dumbest talented team maybe in the history of the NBA when you combine James Hardhead and Russell Westbrook, and I just cannot help using those nicknames for those two players because they're going to be so stupid. They're probably going to be too dumb to get into each other's way. They're going to be going one-on-one the whole game. Hell, they might go one-on-one with each other during the game. Who the hell knows? So anyway, they're going to talk about it. I'm going to chime in.
We're starting with another huge move in the NBA. They just keep coming. Russell Westbrook on his way to Houston. Multiple reports say he's going to the Rockets in a blockbuster deal for Chris Paul and 2 first-round picks. The move means Russ will be reunited with his former Thunder teammate, James Harden. ESPN reports Harden was the driving force behind getting Westbrook to Houston. So
I'm not surprised. Once again, CP3 is one of those guys who suffers from a lack of self-awareness. He has the personality of Kobe Bryant, but he has the results, not even of a John Stockton, because he's not even made it to the finals. And that's why he starts to rub people the wrong way after a while. It's like, dude, you talk like you've won championships, you've never won shit. And then on top of that, you have anxiety issues and you come up small in big moments in the playoffs. I mean, outside of, strangely enough, Chris Paul has also had big moments in the playoffs, normally in the first round. He had great series against the San Antonio Spurs a couple of times and was able to move past them into the second round of the playoffs. But for whatever reason, he just has these mental breakdowns, and it's happened repeatedly over the course of his career. And it rubs his teammates the wrong way because he never wants to admit that he's wrong.
Speak to their relationship and how it'll play out. Shannon, is this trade good or bad for the Rockets?
I don't like it, Skip, for the Rockets, because when I look at this, these two guys do not make sense playing together.
Well, brother, here's the problem. And I know that you might say that they don't fit well together. A lot of people are going to say that. I actually like it because who else can play with either one of them? So you might as well pair them up together. It's like one of those cop buddy movies where you have a couple of guys who don't get along with any partners and they're paired together like Tango and Cash or some shit. You might as well. It's just another NBA storyline, and you never know. They might catch lightning in a bottle and win a championship. Here's what we do know. We know that Russell Westbrook as a player is better than CP3. We know that Russell Westbrook has gone head-to-head against CP3 in the playoffs at least once and scorched him. We know that Russell Westbrook is 4 years younger than CP3. We know that he's a better athlete, and at this stage in his career, when he puts his best foot forward, he's a better defender than CP3. These are things that we know off the bat. We also know that he's much better friends with James Hardhead than CP3 is. We know that Westbrook can't shoot worth a damn, but at this stage in CP3's career, is he that much better of a shooter than Russell Westbrook that it would make up for all the other deficiencies that he has in comparison to Russell Westbrook? That's how we have to evaluate it. We can't just evaluate it on how well Russell and James are going to fit together. We have to evaluate it based on, is it a better fit than James was with CP3? And it's very clear that the situation had become so untenable between CP3 and James Hardhead that one of them had to go. And we know who that person was going to be.
Over the last 5 years, 1 and 2 in usage. Russ is 1, James Harden is 2.
Shannon Sharp, in the modern era of the NBA, they have the 2 highest usage rates for a season. 1 and 2. I believe 1 is James Hardhead and 2 is Westbrook. So nobody else on the team is going to get a shot at all.
Yep, this is one of the things that drove he and Chris Paul apart. And Chris Paul is not nearly, he's ball dominant, but not nearly anything like Russ.
Right, but CP3 is not going to lead you to a championship. So there's only so much shit you're going to take from him.
And it just doesn't make sense to me. And we all talked about over the last month, Skip, the bad contract that Chris Paul had, 3 years, $120+ million.
Yes, the bad contract that he collectively bargained. That's going to be Chris Paul's lasting legacy, that he found a way to get players in their early 30s another 4-year contract where they're going to end up making $45 million a year. It would not surprise me if in the next collective bargaining agreement they get rid of that shit.
You take on Russ, who has an even worse contract, 4 years at 171. Combined, Russ and James Harden average 1 shot per game off of cuts to the basket. 1. So
that means they don't move without the basketball at all. A lot of that's just scared and lazy coaching.
Words, when the guy does not have the ball in his hands, they're not doing anything. It's as simple as that. Russ is a horrible three-point shooter. What do the Rockets do more than anybody in the NBA, Skip? Jack up threes.
That's true, but they also do a lot of drive and kick. So I expect Russ to be doing a lot of that. We also have to understand that Russ has not really played on a team with a lot of three-point shooters. So that's going to open up a lot of wide open three-point shots for Russ. So you would hope that his three-point shooting percentage might get back up into that 35% range.
So you give a guy that's terrible at jacking up threes, that's what he wants to do anyway, and you pair it with James Harden. Skip, I get it. They played together from, 2009 to 2012. But their lives changed. They're not the same guy anymore. They don't view themselves as those guys back then.
I agree with that.
Harden is an MVP. He finished runner-up, I think, four times in the last 5 years. Russell is an MVP. 3 straight triple-doubles.
Yep.
And you put this together, Skip, I had them, before they made this trade, I say they're probably 4th or 5th. I still have them in the same spot. I get, it's fine, like, oh, my God.
I agree. They are still probably somewhere around 4 or 5, but they're far more dangerous now. Far more dangerous.
They got Russ. I just don't see how this works. We question.
Right, but brother, again, you cannot evaluate it on face value. You have to evaluate it comparatively. It's not in a vacuum that we're going to assess that team. We have to say, this is a deal that had to be made. This is the best deal that could be made in order to trade an exorbitant contract for another exorbitant contract. They got younger and more athletic.
They're gonna make. How is Chris Paul and James Harden's gonna do? James Harden is really high in usage, 1 or 2. Chris Paul is like 4 or 5. You combine that, how? And we see. And now you put 1 and 2 together. They're not the same guys. Their lives are not the same.
True.
From 2009 to 2012.
Right.
That's true, but I'm sure that what Daryl Morey is counting on is that both of these guys are 30. And sometimes hitting that milestone makes you more desperate. It makes you more conciliatory.
And you put this together, I just don't see how it's going to work. I get it. You seem to me, Skip, before I let you go, it just seems to me that Daryl Morey is just like, give me any superstar, and I'll put them together and we see how it works. He tried that with...
He's desperate.
He tried that with Dwight Howard. He tried it with Carmelo. And boom. So now he's going to try whatever he can to try to get it with
Chris Paul.
I just... It doesn't make sense to me.
Well, the system has to change. But Daryl Morey is so dug in on analytics. Remember, the analytics nerds are dug in against the former athletes. And their mentality is we have to win. We have to show that stats can win a championship.
You would get off 1 bad contract to take another bad contract with an extra year. I can tell you what's going to happen. I give it a year, maybe 2 at the max. And they're going to be shipping Russ out of there, trying to get some of those draft picks back that they gave OKC.
Not going to happen. Russ has 3 years left on that contract. He's going to play out his contract with James Harden. And what Daryl Morey is going to hope and pray is that maybe at the very least they can get to the Western Conference Finals and lose in 7 games, possibly to the Clippers, and buy him some more time. That's really what this move is about, because that new owner, Fertitta, is not playing.
Hey, you done?
I'm done.
I do agree with you. This was not a good trade. This was an all-time great trade by Daryl Morey.
I won't go that far, but it was a good trade. I'm not quite sure what Shannon's looking at. Like, you really think that's going to bring back Chris Paul?
Because he just righted his own wrong. And it was one of the wrongest wrongs in NBA history. For reasons I still can't explain. To your point, he gave Chris Paul just a year ago this albatross of an anvil of a contract that was hanging around Daryl Morey's neck.
Because he was gambling. What he said is, I know that Chris is going to bite us on the back end. It's going to be a poison pill contract. But I'm just going to throw everything that I have out there on the table and hope that we can get a championship. And they almost got it in 2018. Had they won a chip in 2018, nobody would have cared about how much money they owed Chris Paul.
Dragging this whole franchise down because Chris Paul was about to make 38.5, and then the next year 41.4, and then the next year at his option $44.2 million. And he is a shell of himself, number one. And Daryl Morey couldn't see this coming, I guess, but he became the toxic enemy of one James Harden, who is the most valuable player in that franchise.
Well, after a while, Chris Paul seems to become the toxic enemy of everyone on the team.
Do not invite them. They could not live or work together at the end of the season. Could they have
work together.
fixed it?
State Farm commercial.
State Farm. They had State Farm going, and I told you, I don't know how they got through the commercials. They must have had mediators on both sides, just calming both of them down, saying, remember, you're making $5 million or whatever it is, $10 million off this 1 hour of shooting, right?
It's just amazing how quickly a relationship can deteriorate if both parties are not ready to give a little. In any relationship, I don't care what it is, you have to be ready to give a little. If not, it's going to fail eventually.
Are they going to run any more of those commercials?
I don't know. Is Chris Paul is the State Farm agent going to continue to live with him in Oklahoma City or Miami?
He got to go with him.
Okay, he lives with him, right? It's great.
Yep.
Yeah, I got to get one of those guys. They just live with you. I need one of those guys. So, not only did this, let's start with just the addition by subtraction. We kept saying, there is no way Daryl Morey is going to get out from under this deal because nobody's going to take it.
Agreed.
Somebody took it. It's over. Kaboom. It's gone. And did he have to part with anybody except Chris Paul? Is Clint Capella still there?
Yeah.
Yeah. Is Eric Gordon still there?
Yep.
Is PJ Tucker still there? Yeah, he's there. Is Austin Rivers? I love Austin Rivers. Is he still there?
Yep.
Yeah, and Gerald Green and Daniel House, and they're all still there. Except for addition by subtraction. He's gone. Maybe he'll wind up via Oklahoma City to Miami. We don't know yet. But he's out the door.
I don't see that matchup working either. That tandem of Jimmy Butler and Chris Paul, that's an explosion waiting to happen. I think Chris Paul has one chance. Maybe if he can end up in Philadelphia by some circuitous route, who the hell knows? But that's really his only chance. Or in Milwaukee.
Out of sight, out of mind. And you didn't harm your roster at all. So now we go back to, is Russell Westbrook better than Chris Paul right now?
Absolutely.
Well, let's just do it in a vacuum. Let's just do it on paper. He's 10 times better than Chris Paul is right here, right now.
I'm not quite sure if I say 10 times better, but he's discernibly better than Chris Paul and discernibly more impactful than Chris Paul. To be honest with you, Chris Paul has not been on Russell Westbrook's level of effectiveness for probably about 10 years now. Once again, they went at it with each other in the playoffs. I believe it was in 2014. And Russell Westbrook just totally stomped all over Chris Paul.
Just in and of himself.
Especially with the ball in his hand.
Okay, but I'm saying, just as a basketball player, both sides of the ball. Because Russ defended at a high level last year.
When he wants to, he can defend at a high level.
He ain't better than Chris Paul.
Good. Yes, he is. He is now. Chris Paul has lost his quickness. He looks a little heavy to me.
He's always looked round, but he looks much rounder now. No doubt about it.
Looks like he is on the wrong side of 30.
Okay.
That's what he looks like to me. Do you disagree?
No, I don't disagree, but you do know Russ is 32 now.
Okay. Well, no, he's not. He's not 32, is he?
No. I said he's 30
Oh,
also.
32. I just said he's 32.
No, he's 30.
Oh, he just...
Right, but CP3 ain't 30. CP3 is like 33, 34. He's an old 33 or 34.
Okay, I got you. Okay. So, to me, Russell Westbrook still has 2 high-level, high-energy years left. Only 2, but that's 2 that you got him for. And if you're Daryl Morey and you say, I got to win now with this, and I've thrown everything I can throw at the wall and see if it'd stick before, I'm going to try this one, I'm going to try this guy, because you have to agree that Russell Westbrook and James Harden, for all their negatives, are both forces of offensive nature.
Yeah.
Hey, brothers, have I not used that term for Russell Westbrook? I used that term in last year's playoffs when they squared off against the Utah Jazz. I said Russell Westbrook is a force of nature. There are certain players in the NBA that are force of nature players. Meaning what? They're like a storm. They can either destroy their own team or they could destroy the other team. Russell Westbrook is a force of nature player. James Harden is a force of nature player. They just go out there in one game they might have 51, 12, and 11. And it's like, wow. And then the next game they shoot 9 for 32.
Both of them.
Yes.
LeBron James, especially in his prime, he was a force of nature player, and he was the most proficient and efficient force of nature player probably in the history of the league.
Okay, now let's go to those two guys. By all accounts, by many reports, they wanted to reunite. They sought each other immediately after Oklahoma City was out of the playoffs, according to several outlets, including Brian Windhorst and I think the Chronicle have reported. Russell was already on the phone talking to James. Is there any way we could figure out how to pair up? So they both had.
That's what happens when you get around 30. All that I'm going to try it on my own shit, that shit wears out when these dudes get 30. They say things at 26, 25, 24 years old, and they have no idea what they're saying, because when you get 30, 31, your brain just starts to expand. It just grows in width, and you comprehend things on a far higher level. You realize everything is just not about you.
Equal interest in reuniting. James wanted Russ, Russ wanted James. Why would they want each other? Because they know each other.
And they're two peas in a pod. They're two dimwits who are extremely talented, and they said, let's put our heads together. We both have half a brain. Maybe if we put our heads together, we can make a whole brain and possibly make a run in the playoffs. And they could. Once again, I could see the Rockets going out in the first round. I could see them winning the championship. There are about 6 or 7 teams that I could see winning the championship next year, and they're one of them.
And they did have the advantage, the immense benefit. It's not like they were just buddies who have never been teammates. They were teammates, to your point, for 3 years. They hung out. They practiced with and against each other. They were in the locker room. They were in the huddle. They were on the road. They were everywhere together. They know inside out who they were. I get you. You say their lives have changed. Their statuses have changed. But along the trail, each has won an MVP, right? And Russell has done his triple-doubles for 3 straight years. He's averaged. So he's done all that. But they wanted to get together because they do know that for 1 year, especially that last year together, when James Harden was the 6th man of the year, he averaged 17 points a game for that team. So he played a lot of basketball on the same floor with Russell Westbrook.
Right, but he's not going to be a 6th man anymore. It's totally different. When James Harden was on OKC, he was like the little brother to KD and Westbrook. But after he left and he started to, grow his wings and spread his wings per se, he's not the same guy anymore. So they're definitely going to have to figure out exactly who's going to be doing what. It's going to take a minute, but they're both 30s, so they are going to, defer a bit to one another, especially early on. And I think that they're going to fit together better than CP3 fit with James, because CP3 is just, you can tell he's just an acerbic dude.
Who at that point averaged 24, so 24 to 17. So it worked a little bit. Can you give it just a little bit?
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Because they were paired up a lot. Okay? I know those teams because that team knocked my team out.
But Skip,
by the way, my team went up 2-0, and then those two just took it over.
That 2012 OKC team had probably the most raw talent of any team that I've ever seen. Just raw talent.
Yes.
But Skip, you're talking about Russ wasn't the Russ that we know now with the high usage. And neither was James Harden. He was a bench player. He came off the bench.
Okay? Just remember, though, there's a connection. There's a soul connection because they're both, here we go again, Southern California. They're LA products, right?
Yeah.
And they're just a year apart. It's a little more than a year. But the point is, they knew of each other growing up.
Right.
And then, obviously, one goes to Arizona State, one stays at UCLA. But still, there's a soul connection of Southern California, just like that guy number 2 and Paul George.
So being from Southern California is going to make one of these guys want to pass the ball to the other.
Okay.
No, not necessarily. But being from Southern California, as Skip Bayless has tried to illustrate, they know one another. And it'll probably make it more likely that they'll be willing to try to fit in together. That's the point that he's trying to make. I don't really think that that's going to be the issue. I think that the bigger issue is going to be that they're both desperate, and they know that for the most part, this is their last gasp as top-notch level players. I think they both realize that at 30 years old, they have about 2 or 3 years left, respectively, of being considered dominant players.
Here's the other point. They have each led the NBA in assists, and Russell just did it again, right?
Yeah.
He's led the last 2 years.
Yeah.
And James led it in 2017. So
Yes.
the last 3 years of the NBA, we have 2 guys leading it in assists 3 times. 2 for...
Right, but growing up as a kid, you remember certain people would lead the league in assists, and it was because they actually passed the ball. It wasn't because they had the ball in their hands so much that they could get 8, 9, 10 assists per game by mistake. When John Stockton or Rod Strickland would lead the league in assists and they were averaging 11, 12, 13 assists a game, it was because they were distributing. Magic Johnson, Isaiah Thomas, etc. These guys, they just have the ball in their hands so damn much, they can't help but to get 10 assists a game.
And 1 for James.
Yes.
What does that tell you about their mentality? Do they pass the basketball?
When they have to, yeah. They look up at the scoreboard on top of the arena to see how many assists and rebounds they have because they want to know how close they get to a triple-double. So they always want to make sure that they're somewhere around 10 assists. It's not because they want to distribute the basketball. These guys, and like I said, it's not all their fault. A lot of these coaches coach scared because these players are making so much money. They're scared to tell the players that this is what you need to do. This is what we need you to do in our offense. They play under coaches that create these fake offensive systems that's really just glorified playground basketball. And it hurts the player in the long run because they're not forced to grow and develop. That's why Golden State beats these teams, even though they have lesser talent, because they actually play team basketball.
Is it just total gunnery on both cases? No. They pass. You have to be able to pass the ball some to lead it in assists.
Yeah.
Am I right?
Oh, yes. It was,
Okay, so you have 2 guys capable of high assists,
Yes.
like double-digit
Yes.
assists.
Yes, and 2 guys high
Okay.
usage.
Okay,
Thank you, Shannon. I agree with that.
because you're right. 1, 2, 2, 1 for the last 4 years. It's just gone back and forth between those 2.
Yes.
Okay. Now, what do they have in common at this stage and age of their careers?
They're both desperate as hell.
Both have struggled in the postseason to the
That too.
point that both know what it feels like to be condemned for the disaster that was a postseason for the Thunder or for the Rockets, right?
Yes.
They have been the #1 targets of those fandoms in Oklahoma City and Houston. Where were you, James Harden? Where were you, Russell Westbrook?
Okay.
Yeah, that's why I call them Tango and Cash. Or Dumb and Dumber. A couple of rogue cops that's always fucking up, and they just get partnered up together.
And overcome you and you. So now they're sharing a blame dynamic that they've both experienced, and they're both at that 30 mark where they're starting to say, wait a second, I don't have anything to show for all.
Absolutely. That's the best point that you've made thus far, Skip Bayless. That's the biggest point to be made. That right now, they're both 30. And necessity can force great things out of people.
Accolades,
Oh,
right?
you think they think that?
Yes, I do think they think that.
I agree. I think they think that as well.
And it is time for one or the other to sacrifice to try to win something in this league, or they're both going to go down and out as another one of those guys who never won anything.
Well, here,
And who are only in the league to accumulate stats. The both of them just need one championship. If they get one championship, the both of them, people are going to look back at their big stat seasons differently. If they retire with no chip, they're going to be looked at as nothing but stat patters.
hey, here's my question to you. If they thought like that, why haven't they done this sooner? Why it takes now for you to think about that?
Because they've been coddled by their coaches for their entire careers. Everywhere they've gone. James Harden, to a degree, since he came onto the Rockets, he's been told that he's all that in the Hot Wheel track. He's never been really coached. Kevin McHale, for a moment, tried to coach him, but I think he was ran out by Daryl Morey because Kevin McHale was not as willing to just go for layups and three-point shots as strictly as Mike D'Antoni is. So it's really impeded James Harden's growth. He has very low-level understanding of the actual game of basketball at a high level. That's why when he faces teams that have a high team basketball IQ like Golden State or San Antonio, he embarrasses himself. Same thing with Russell Westbrook. They've been failed by their coaches. They've been failed by the business paradigm in the NBA that overpays these players and has them thinking that they know more than the damn coach.
It started with number 2. He just wrecked the whole dynamic. All the
Stop it, Skip. Knock it off, man.
dominoes fell for number 2. Am I right?
No, you're not right. You're bitter. You're mad at number 2 and you're bitter. Okay? I mean, shit, you got me calling number 2 now. You're mad at Kawhi. Get over it.
But
Okay. What if he doesn't go after Paul George? We're not having this conversation.
no, and so, but my thing is, Skip, is that when you pair these guys together, and I give you, they led the league in assists, but they need the ball to do that. The question is, okay, who's taking the last shot? These
James Harden.
don't think like that. Even though they struggled in the playoffs, each guy says, you know what? I can be the one to get us out
Right?
of this.
All right.
That's partially true, but I think that we have seen some growth from Russell Westbrook and understanding that sometimes he's going to have to defer, especially in clutch situations, because he's not a good shooter. And until he proves otherwise, he should not be taking the last shot. And he did defer to Paul George over the course of the season last year in big moments. So I believe that he'll do the same with James Harden.
I have respect for Mike D'Antoni in only one area only, and that is offensive. I'm going to go so far as to genius.
Okay.
I think he has genius
He
about
does.
him. And I don't think his players listen to him like when we see those sideline huddles.
Why would they? He basically just says, run the floor. You guys, just stand behind the 3-point line. James, dribble. And if you have the shot, take it. If you don't, kick it out. So, no, they don't respect him because they know he's not going to come up with anything deep on the chalkboard.
Tape. It's like all this play. They're looking up in the stands and they're looking at their shoes and they're just tuning them out. We got to get a stop here, guys. We got to get a stop. You know, like it's just
That's your Mike D'Antoni.
it's just gibberish coming out of his mouth.
Okay.
But I do believe they listen to him in practice and in meetings because he has a track record in this league, starting with Steve Nash in Phoenix, and you can just go right down the
Stoudemire.
line. All the okay. So they know he knows how to get them the sugar. You know, like this is they know he can figure out how to put all of them in the best positions.
Right.
Now they've been challenged, just as James and Chris Paul were challenged to try to figure this out. But I think James looked a little mentally weary to me at the end of the year because as much...
Yeah, he was won out by Chris Paul. It's one thing to have to go against the opposition, but it's another thing to have to deal with this guy in the locker room ranting and raving and trying to act like he's a champion when he's not. So that's why in the post-game press conference, when they asked him about what the issues were with the team, he says, I know what the issue is. We just have to deal with that issue. And he was talking about Chris Paul. So now that that burden is off his shoulders, we'll see what happens.
Loves to dribble, shoot. After a while, it wears you out mentally.
I couldn't tell.
Okay, well,
Because he was still dribble, shooting.
yeah.
Shannon, like me, he stay on James Hardhead.
Could you tell in the fourth quarters of those games against Golden State? Because he was horrible as usual.
No, that's my point.
Okay.
Yeah, but this is the problem with James Hardhead. They put so much onus on his contribution to the offense that when the playoffs come and big moments come in the playoffs, it's very predictable what they're going to do. So it makes him very easy to stop because, once again, there's no ball movement, there's no player movement. So to a degree, I understand Chris Paul's frustration. But he also has to grasp that after 2 years there, you can't start complaining now. You just can't. You have to get out. That's why I believe that the divorce was best for the both of them.
Until he felt because he was still doing the exact same thing. And guess what? Mike D'Antoni, thanks to Daryl Morey, just added another guy that's not going to Skip, can you imagine Russell Westbrook spotting up in the corner, jacking up 10 threes a game?
Russell Westbrook, he's going to start getting alerts to his email to see if he wants a job as a construction worker. He's going to say, well, sir, all those bricks, you might as well put them to good use.
Okay.
They're shooting 29%.
Okay. It's time to change your approach. You just watch. Just watch. There is desperation in Houston on the part of the GM, who has looked like a fool with all of his
I agree. The last 3 years, Daryl Morey has not looked good. But he's proud. He's holding on to his analytics bullshit.
MIT conference.
Right.
You know, he just throws it all against the wall. He throws a bunch of numbers against the wall and hope they stick
That's exactly what he does.
because he just tried yet another superstar.
But yeah, and guess what? What would the analytics say? adding two guys that are ball dominant, high in usage rate. What would the analytics say about putting those two guys together?
I think that Daryl Morey would respond to that question by stating, we're going to get Russell Westbrook to play in a much more efficient way by actually asking him to do more of what he does in OKC, except we're going to be able to spread the floor in a way that OKC could not spread the floor. We all know that OKC had zero outside shooting other than Paul George. Zero. So in Houston, there's going to be much more room for Russell Westbrook to work. They're not going to change his game too much. They're going to say, Russell, when you have the ball, be aggressive. If you don't have the three-point shot, don't take it. We know that you can beat anybody in the league off the dribble. If you have the step, take the step. If you get cut off in the paint, kick the ball out to a wide-open shooter. Make it simple for him. You have to, because neither one of these guys have a very high basketball IQ. So I don't think they're going to ask Russell Westbrook to change his approach or change his game. They're just going to ask him to do what he normally does, just do it better.
So now he don't want to have legs anymore.
Now I think he's saying, I got two superstars who are offensive dynamos.
Yeah.
Agreed.
And they are very close friends. So maybe they can figure it out with D'Antoni tweaking it on the fly. And if they do, come April, you are going to have some trouble because
I agree. They're going to be very dangerous. They're going to be very dangerous in April. They're not going to be a team that you want to see. They're going to be dumb as hell, but they're also going to be dangerous as hell.
Going to be a force. This team is better than it was last year.
Agreed.
Them, the Clippers are better. The Lakers are better. You love Utah. You love Denver. You think Portland's going to be right back up in the mix. I just don't see it. So what is Eric Gordon going to do?
You left out Golden State.
Golden State, okay.
That was a big mistake on your part because they are listening right now.
I just want to know, just ask me one thing. When does Eric Gordon get to shoot the ball?
Maybe more than you think.
How?
Yeah. Maybe they say, this time we got to prove to everybody we can actually win in the postseason.
I agree. I really believe that James Harden and Russell Westbrook are going to approach next season with a different understanding, a higher understanding than what they've done in previous years. That turning 30, that's a milestone for athletes. They come to understand, look, it's now or never. It's do or die. We have to make this work, whatever needs to be done. I don't care about how many rebounds I average. I don't care about how many assists I average. We just have to get it done. So I do think they're going to try. And I don't think that getting the ball to Eric Gordon necessarily is going to be a problem. Some of those other guys, it might be a problem. I joke a lot about Westbrook and Hardhead because they're a couple of idiots out there on the basketball court, but they're super duper talented. We'll just see if they're going to be able to make it work. The problem with the NBA today is that it's so much like a video game. These guys, either they just dunk or take wide open threes. There's very little nuance. And it's really impacted many of these players' understanding of the game because they don't say to themselves, okay, let's think on the fly. Let's see what we can do. This team is starting to get away from us with a three-point shot. Okay, let's not try to slow it down. Let's actually try to have a three-point shooting contest with them. That makes a 15-point lead a 25-point lead. Back in the day, when a team saw that they were getting outgunned, they said, okay, let's get it to the big man in the post. Let's slow it down. Let's try to get to the free throw line. Teams today don't do that. Everybody wants to outrun and outgun everybody else.
Maybe by April they have figured out a new flow where they're load managing mentally as well as physically, where the pressure is off these two. I just like the shot. And you listen, those are all good points. And I was the first to think, boy, high usage rate.
Yes.
But now they have both been challenged as high IQ players, especially James. I think.
Who is? Skip Bayless. Come on, man. You might be on some really, really potent crack rock out there in LA. High IQ players. Oh my goodness.
High basketball IQ.
I don't think that Russell Westbrook or James Harden could spell IQ.
Figure out how to re-ingratiate Russ into the flow. Because if you utilize their gifts, they are extraordinary gifts on both parts. But
that would take very high level coaching. And I think that in the case of both those players, it's a little bit too late for that.
They can do things nobody else can do.
Yeah.
I agree with that.
They're doing things, one and the other, in ways nobody's ever done it in the history of basketball.
That's true.
Am I right about that? So
I think that combined, they probably have the most 50-point triple-doubles of any players in history.
you take Russ's energy
Probably other than Wilt.
You just take, it's contagious energy. He does, again, he plays for himself. He plays for his stats. But at least...
But now he's going to change that.
Okay? No, he's bringing an edge to this team that it didn't have. He brings an RPM every night. He plays his tail off.
Yeah.
As you know, again, he's playing for his own stats.
Right.
But maybe now these two reunite and say, now we got to...
Shannon keep trying to jump in. How did that help the Rockets? Well, once again, we have to evaluate this in contrast to what we just saw with CP3. So this is definitely a better situation than what they had with CP3.
Really sacrifice and sort of reroute all of our energies into winning.
Why wouldn't James Harden do that with Chris Paul?
I think they never...
Because they didn't like one another. That's what he's trying to let you know, Shannon. They didn't like one another, and after a while, I don't think that James Harden really respected what Chris Paul was bringing to the table on a basketball floor. And once he lost respect for him as a basketball player, and then on top of that, you a rude little bastard too? Like, come on, man, you out of here.
Each other. Well,
then why did James Harden had to sign off on this, Skip?
On which?
Chris Paul.
Chris Paul? I guess so. I don't...
Yeah, he did initially because he realized that he needed help. Remember, the reason why they brought Chris Paul in is because the narrative was that James Harden was burnt out, and that's why he flamed out against San Antonio in Game 6. So that's why he co-signed it. And then on top of that, Chris Paul was desperate to get out of LA because he had basically burned all his bridges in that locker room. So that's how that came to be. And they met up in the summertime and worked out. I remember seeing footage of them working out in the park, running around and working out with kettlebells and all that other shit. And it started out great. I was shocked because there's no way in the world I thought that they were going to work. They played together in the Drew League in the summertime to try to build chemistry, and the chemistry really showed. I think that the first time that it really started to be an issue was in 2018 when CP3 went down and James Harden has just started taking 35 shots a game to average 37 points a game, and it became too seductive for him. And I think that CP3 realized, even though he played the good soldier when he was asked about it by the press, he knew, at least behind the curtain, he knew that that was not going to be healthy for the team because James Harden was getting strung out on all them shots. Having a green light can become like heroin for some of these players. It's difficult to wean them off of that shit.
It never seemed like they really clicked, in friends ways.
Well,
they never loved playing with each other.
Well, I just think their style, what they need the ball. Chris Paul needed the ball to be successful.
Were James and Chris friends before Chris was forced on him?
No.
He came over from the Clippers? No?
Look, I got a bunch of friends. I ain't trying to live with them every day.
Okay.
I ain't trying to play with them every day.
Okay, but he...
How can you? You live with LeBron and Savannah. Can't play with your friends every day.
With this friend before.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that gives you a chance that you wouldn't have with somebody coming out of the blue.
I agree, especially in the situation that the both of them are in. When you're an athlete, a professional athlete in the NBA, there's a big difference between being 34 and 30 years old. Regular people, aka civilians, there's not much difference between being 30 and 34. But in the NBA, the difference between 30 and 34 is almost like 20 years in real life situations. It really is, because depending on how well you upkeep your body, there can be a great amount of deterioration in those 4 years, depending on how well you upkeep your body.
It's hard, Skip, when the lives have changed. James Harden is not the sixth man anymore. Russell Westbrook is not the guy.
I got it. But remember, they're now decorated. They did all their individual stuff.
Yes.
So now it's time. I'm challenging them here, right here, right now, that you have to say, time out. Who am I? What am I? What is my legacy going to be?
And I really do think that that's what they're thinking.
Solo act? Am I going to be a solo act, or am I going to be a champion?
How many times have we heard people say, all I care about is winning? But what they really mean, I want to win, but I want to win my way. I need 10 for $150 and 2 touchdowns. Mm-hmm. Oh, I want to win because, I've had all these individual accolades. So instead of averaging 30, 10, and 7, if I could average 28, 8, and 6, that would be okay.
You mean like your boy LeBron? That's what you're talking about, like your boy LeBron. Keep in mind that, once again, LeBron James is a force of nature type player. Some people might say, well, what about Jordan and Kobe? Were they force of nature type players? Well, there was a bit of that, but Jordan and Kobe were more do-what-it-takes players. If they needed to, they would play great defense. If they needed to, they would get 50. The difference between Jordan and Kobe, though, of course, is that Jordan was far more proficient and had a far higher basketball IQ than Kobe. But they were not force of nature players per se. They were not going to go out there and try to average 30, 10, and 10. When I say force of nature, I mean just dominate every aspect of the offensive game. They did not have that type of mindset. Now, Oscar Robertson and, of course, later on, LeBron and James Harden and Russell Westbrook, even Allen Iverson to a degree, they were more force of nature type players. Even though Allen Iverson, he kind of was a style all his own, but he was a force of nature type player to a degree.
Really changed. Skip, these guys want to be the guy. Russell has been the guy since KD left. Well, he thought he was the guy when KD was there.
That was the problem. And I think Russell found out once KD was gone how difficult it was.
James Harden.
That's why I stated that in any relationship you have to concede certain things or it's not going to work in the long run.
The guy since he arrived in Houston, he's been the guy. So now you're going to put these two guys together and one guy say, you know what? I thought you said that's not how Russell was wired. I thought you said he don't back down from anybody. So now all of a sudden you say, you know what, James? You right. You right. You the big dog now. You the big chief. I'm going to take a back seat. You think that's how Russ thinks?
No, I don't think that's how it's going to be. I think that they're going to get together, they're going to have a conversation, and they're going to say, let's try to win this chip. And things are going to flow naturally from there. They have to. Very similar to when Earl the Pearl Monroe teamed up with Walt Clyde Frazier. Now, as we know, the style of play back then was a bit different. Guards were not allowed to just jack up shots like that. But back then, you had guards who were averaging 23, 24 points a game. As a matter of fact, I believe that Walt Clyde and Earl the Pearl were a couple of them. And they had to concede in order for it to work. And they were able to win a chip in 1973. But the difference is that New York Knicks team was known for its very high basketball IQ. These two guys, Russell Westbrook and Harden, a.k.a. Tango and Cash, a.k.a. Dumb and Dumber, they have a very low basketball IQ.
We'll see.
Yeah, exactly.
We'll see. But I think it's got a chance. All I know for sure is they are much better than they were a day ago.
Agreed.
Okay, so what? So
Much better.
Instead of the 5th seed, they'll be the 4th seed.
Okay. All right. Well, so there's some better in your eyes. You're admitting that they're better.
They were
right?
4th seed last year.
Okay.
I had them 5th. So what? They're 4th. Skip, you keep.
Right, but Shannon, again, all they can ask is to be in the mix. That's all they can ask. You have to compare where they are now with what they were, not where they are with the other top teams. There's no way that you are going to be able to trade a 34-year-old 6-foot traditional point guard who's making $45 million a year and get back a healthy Kevin Durant and a healthy Kawhi Leonard. That's what you're acting like they would have needed to get back in order for this trade to be a success. That's not how it works.
Chris Paul had a bad contract, albatross of a contract, and he did. But all they did was pick up a guy that had a worse contract because he has an extra year for $47 million.
Brother, he's way younger than Chris Paul, and he brings a lot more to the table. So he does not have a worse contract than CP3. CP3 has the worst contract in the NBA other than John Wall.
You make it seem like Russ' contract is like, oh, man, this I would love to have
Okay, I'm going to
that.
ask you again.
Yeah.
Better player right here, right now. Russell or CP3?
Russ is a better player.
Okay, so that's it. That's basically all it comes down to.
But I believe Chris Paul worked better with James Harden.
That's not possible. They never won shit. They never won shit, and it was getting worse.
But Russ will. Chris Paul.
I didn't see that.
Let me ask you,
Me neither.
who's a better shooter? And in this offense, what do you need? Shooters. So who's a better?
Well, really, you need penetrators. They have a lot of shooters already. They need penetrators. Chris Paul could not beat his man to the basket. He couldn't finish over the opposing team's rim defenders at the cup. We would think or conjecture that Russ will still be able to do that next season.
Chris Paul or Russ?
Okay, I'll give you that.
Okay.
But who's the better player? Who's the better scorer?
Don't you got enough?
Who's the better passer right now?
Don't you got enough?
Russ is better than... Listen, Chris Paul is just... It's hard to watch him anymore.
I agree. Russell is literally better than Chris Paul right now at everything other than pure shooting. And Chris Paul is not a great pure shooter anymore.
He's lost his quickness. He's lost any lift that he ever had. He has to... When he tries to shoot his jumper, he has to like muscle it up to get up to the apogee to release it. Like, ugh.
Chris Paul
It hurts to watch it.
No, it don't.
Yeah, it does.
No, it does not.
Well,
Yeah, he's not quite as bad as Skip making him out to be, but there has been a decline.
what's going to happen if he goes to Miami? Does that make them the favorite?
Well, Skip, I've always felt, even though this trade didn't materialize, I feel Chris Paul would be a better fit with Jimmy Butler than Russ.
Why? Why would Chris Paul fit in better with Jimmy Butler? Those guys would be at each other's throats by the midway point of the season.
Disagree?
Listen, I would disagree because Russ is just better.
So you
just listen.
Skip,
The NBA is a stars game.
Yes.
This guy has star power.
Yes.
I always tell you, I don't love watching him. I'm sorry, I love watching him, but I wouldn't love playing with him.
Right.
But if you get somebody he really respects, because it's only been him and Durant where he really respected somebody.
It is a star league, but championships are won with pieces that fit. And
That's true. But Shannon, once again, I have news for you, brother. They were not going to win a championship without trading for Russell Westbrook. They might not win a championship with him, but they have a better chance with him than without him if the replacement is CP3. That tandem was dead. CP3 is dead to James Harden, man. They were not going to go anywhere. They had to make that trade.
don't have pieces that fit. You just, because remember, Skip, for the longest time, that's what we was doing in the Olympics. We just get the best talent, nothing fit. Oh, we just got this guy, this guy, this guy. And everybody, like, all of a sudden, Argentina got the gold medal. They're like, what the hell happened? How did that happen?
That was because Argentina was just better than
Man, stop playing.
It was because of Manu Ginobili.
There you go.
Well, I'm going there because he was a force of nature.
But
that wasn't our fault. That was his.
So in other words, Argentina had better players than us.
They did.
No, they didn't. Stop, please, stop it, Skip, baby. You know good.
I'll say this. Argentina defeated the U.S. national team in 2004 because they knew what they were doing strategy-wise. The 2004 Olympic team had no idea what the hell they were doing. With Larry Brown and Greg Popovich trying to coach that team, and that numbskull Allen Iverson and those guys on the squad. I'm trying to remember who else was on there. LeBron was on there. I think Carmelo was on there. That team was never going to win.
Did they not have better players?
They were too dumb from an individual basketball IQ perspective. The only player on the squad who had a high basketball IQ was Tim Duncan. And he couldn't control the ball. They had the ball in that fool Allen Iverson's hands the whole time.
All right, we're getting off topic. But great points to the Harden Westbrook trade, guys. Shannon, I was with you when the news broke yesterday, but Skip, Vegas is with you. The odds for the Rockets to win the championship went from 10-1 to 7-1.
As they should have. Russell Westbrook's a better player. I mean, come on, not that difficult to figure out.
There you go.
Just takes in some more
like
money.
a 6 to a 5.
Yeah, exactly. So from the 5th seed to the 4th seed.
We got a lot.
But anyway, that's basically it on that. We'll see how things go for Tango and Cash, a.k.a. Dumb and Dumber, over the course of this season. The sky's the limit for that duo, but they also have a very low floor. So we'll see what happens. Peace.